my disabled kids. Donate now. Bye.
Let me see if we're live. Let me see if this joint's working. All right, let me double check it real quick here. You're saying you guys don't see nothing?
Oh, now I see it.
All right, cool. Yeah, thanks for whistling, Darren, when I was playing the video and stuff. That was like a really great touch. Really appreciated that. You guys are just ultimate pros. Not only were we starting, 20 minutes late, but you guys are whistling while I'm playing the opening video. And when I say you guys, I mean David Wood and Anthony Rogers. Welcome to Street Apologist Live. I'm going to make some adjustments on some of the cameras here. But for now, I got you guys all big and on the bottom where you belong. And let's get this thing started. So, Anthony, how can people find you on social media, brother?
Oh, on social media? I'm only on Facebook. I don't do Twitter or the other stuff, whatever that stuff is.
Okay. All right.
I'm on YouTube. I put videos on David's channel. I have my own channel. I don't put a lot of stuff on it, although I will, coming up towards the end of the year, I think, start doing some more of that.
All right, dope. And you know the gentleman we are going to be discussing, right? Right when I said his name, you knew who I was talking about.
Who's that?
Well, I'm saying Anthony knows. Anthony, you know, Anthony knew all about it right away when I said it. He was like, "Oh yeah."
You mean Ehteshaam?
Yeah, but Anthony, that's like an N, meaning I'm saying you're like, yeah,
Oh yeah. I'm sorry. I was looking at something else. Are you asking me to tell my backstory with Ehteshaam?
You know what? I was, but never mind. You just look at something else and we'll come back to you, okay? No, that's okay. That's okay.
Okay.
Don't worry, we'll come back to you. And once you, So, David Wood, people need to subscribe to you. You just hit some milestones on your YouTube channel. Tell people about that because it's pretty epic.
Yeah, just reached 100 million views. 100 million. Yep. And so now next thing in sight is 500,000 subs, and then we'll begin the countdown to 1 million.
Oh man. All right, well, I'm definitely excited about that. Okay, so I don't know if everybody was able to see the beginning. We played a little. How do you say it again, Anthony? Ehteshaam?
Ehteshaam Gulam.
Yep.
Ehteshaam Gulam. Okay, we played a little clip. I don't know if you guys got to hear it and see it. Maybe this time, don't whistle. This is his impersonation of you, David Wood. All right, you ready to see?
Yeah,
this?
yeah.
All right. So it's good stuff. So this is the proper way to begin the show, and then we'll get right into it. Which we're gonna answer a critique of his of the Boom Boom Room. That's what we're doing here today on Street Apologist Live. Me, David Wood, and Anthony Rogers, and here is Ehteshaam.
Hi, I'm David Wood. I tried to kill my father with a hammer and my mom put me in a mental hospital. Now I annoy Muslims because, hey, gotta pay the bills somehow because I gotta somehow pay the hospital bills for my disabled kids. Donate now. Bye.
Did you guys get to hear that? Did everyone hear that?
I didn't hear it, but I've seen it, so
Okay.
I'm just enjoying David's face.
David, did you get to hear? Was the volume?
Yeah, I heard it. Yeah. No, see, I have to turn on my volume on YouTube to watch it because we can't through your headphones. You are getting a comment that your volume is low on you, so you might want to turn that up on Ecamm. But yeah, that was pretty epic for Ehteshaam.
I'm turning up my volume here right now, and I'm going to. I just got to play that one more time. So this is the guy.
You could play this 100 times. You could just do your whole live stream playing it.
I kind of feel like you should start all your videos with this guy. Because see, we're going to do this video where he's criticizing the Boom Boom Room where it was Muhammad and Stephen Hawking. And I found this. It looks like he did it in January 2020. And I like to answer from time to time Boom Boom Room critiques. So if you haven't seen the Boom Boom Room, you're going to see some clips today from Ehteshaam's video. But again, I just got to play this one more time because I don't feel like everyone's heard it. And then Anthony or David, if you have any critiques, how good of a impersonation is this? Do you think, David? I'd be curious to hear. All right, one more time, guys. Here we go.
Hi, I'm David Wood. I tried to kill my father with a hammer, and my mom put me in the mental hospital. Now I annoy Muslims because, hey, gotta pay the bills somehow, because I gotta somehow pay the hospital bills for my disabled kids. Donate now. Bye.
It's messed up that why does he think it's cool to talk about the kids? I don't get that, because it kind of seems like he's mocking disabled children here. Am I wrong?
No, I think he's just mocking me, right? It's like, I'm I tried to kill my dad, blah 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 blah, but I got to pay the bills because I have disabled kids, so that's my reason for going after Islam. As if I couldn't have just been a philosophy professor and had a nice comfy job to take care of my family. So I really wanted to go after Muslims who threatened to kill my disabled kids. That was my brilliant plan.
All right, before I play,
you're still getting claims that your volume is still a little low.
All right, I'm gonna make a couple changes here and see if I can fix that. You guys let me know. What about now? I'm trying to do a couple changes here to get it louder, and hopefully it is better now. Okay, you guys let me know. Keep on letting me know. Okay, so Anthony, let's try take 2 on this, brother. You know Ehteshaam. Right?
Yeah. David's had a lot more interaction with Ehteshaam than I have, I think. But
I debated
my
him.
experience. Yeah. So first of all, I think his earliest appearance was back when James White was supposed to debate somebody else. I don't remember who that person was, but they backed out of the debate because that person said he wouldn't debate James White because James White was associated with David. Right? Is that correct, David? It was during the time.
No, you're partly right. That was not Ehteshaam's first debate.
Okay.
I believe it might have been Mary Jo Sharp. It was either me or Mary Jo Sharp, but we both debated him back in the day, and he even admitted that Mary Jo won their debate. I don't even remember what I debated him on. Maybe the resurrection. I don't know, something like that. And then it was still sometime later when James White was supposed to debate a guy. He's from Africa. I believe he's a student of Ahmed Deedat, and so James White was supposed to debate him. But
was it Yusuf Ismail?
No. It was no. I'm trying to think of his name. Yeah, I can't remember. It would have been an utter massacre. The guy's not a good debater, even though he uses Deedat's material. But yeah, he was supposed to debate James White I think it was either the night we got arrested or like the night after we got arrested. And so we got arrested. Now keep in mind, when we got arrested, the rumor that circulated very rapidly was we were screaming at people and causing a riot, blah 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 blah. And this guy knows that we know James White and stuff like that. So yeah, something like that. He said no, because James White's associated with these guys who are running around harassing Muslims. Of course, it was all nonsense. Nabil was calmly and politely answering questions from young Muslims when they showed up and threw us all in jail, then lied about us and took our cameras for almost a month. But yeah, he used that as an excuse to back out of the debates. And then once he did that, George Sayegh found a replacement in Ehteshaam, because Ehteshaam lived around there somewhere. And then James White, I think, if I recall correctly, and keep in mind this is like 10 years ago, I believe that James White walked in the church, and that's where he found out. Right, James White walked into the church, expecting to debate one person. That's when he finds out, nope, we have another debater, Ehteshaam. Some of those details might be a little off because it was 10 years ago, but yeah, something like that.
Yeah, so from what I heard, he was really upset with George for doing that and said, don't ever do that to me again.
Yeah.
Because, of course, Ehteshaam was a mess. So apparently, because James White wouldn't debate him, he got me, and I didn't know anything about Ehteshaam at the time, and he brought me out to Arizona. I think Vocab was there, or at least you were supposed to be. And what happened was, I prepared for this debate. I'm going there to debate Ehteshaam. I get there and find out that Ehteshaam is not going to be coming to the debate because his mom told him he couldn't debate. And so I think, if I'm not mistaken, that's when Vocab. I could have these events mixed up.
But it was with the Osama Abdullah. That's when I debated you. When you were supposed to debate him, wasn't that? Oh, there was 2 times they canceled on us.
Yeah, mine wasn't with Osama. I debated Osama in Detroit, Michigan one year, but I never was going to debate him in Arizona.
So did I take Ehteshaam's place in that debate?
Yeah.
Oh, hey.
See, you're all connected.
Yeah.
We're all connected. We got all the connections here.
So people should understand that you were going to do it you were pretending to be a Muslim. You weren't actually a Muslim in the debate.
That debate is on my channel. D-New, if you guys can remember, we need to put a index, one of those card things above right here where people can see the debate between Anthony and me when I was Jamar Sadat. And we debated like the New Testament or is Jesus God? Yeah, I think that's what it was. Yeah. So I took Ehteshaam's place, so he should totally... That dude owes me some money. he should be like, hey, cool, man, Vocab, thanks, bro. You have my back. Okay, so what was the deal with his mom telling him he couldn't debate? I've never fully understood that.
Well, I think he's a train wreck, so I'll let David comment, but I was just going to say that he's an embarrassment as far as representing Islam, so I don't think his parents wanted him to do that. And I do think there's some other issues there, but...
Yeah, I'm guessing he just said, "Mommy, I'm going down to Arizona to debate," and she said, "What? No, you're not."
Well, I just want to inform the live chat that Ehteshaam has entered the live chat. He is here with us, answering Christians 1.
Well, he'll love it, even if we're sitting in here wrecking Islam, he'll like the attention, right? You know what I mean? Some guys like the attention.
Yeah, he said.
And guys, Vocab, heads up. He's gonna be over there. I smashed my dad's head in. I smashed my dad's head in. I smashed my dad's head in. Just heads up. You don't need moderators. You don't need to block him over stuff like that, or even time him out.
Usually, okay. So, you know that Muslims a lot of times have rules for themselves and rules for everyone else. We're actually gonna allow that to stand here. We're gonna have a little bit of Sharia in the live chat. And so to my moderators, we're going to allow Ehteshaam to get away with everything but murder tonight. Okay, so Ehteshaam, you have a free pass. Be as respectful or disrespectful as you want, and we will not block you. Because usually the mods get usually the mods lay the hammer down. But Ehteshaam...
you said lay the hammer down. You're giving him ammunition.
Oh, I didn't even think of that. All right, oh my goodness.
Yeah, Ehteshaam, you can comment as long as your mother will let you.
Dude, this is like just vicious. Okay, I'm gonna try. I'm sorry. This is it's gonna be one of those shows. Okay, so David, I'm gonna try to get this video set up. Can you real quick explain this particular Boom Boom episode while I get this set up, please? I'm sorry, man. That was a good one, Anthony. Okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
The Stephen Hawking episode?
Yeah. Could you just break that down? I'm going to get the clip set up of Ehteshaam.
I don't recall tremendously. And just to be clear, I have not seen the video of Ehteshaam that you're talking about. So I have no idea what he's going to come with. I haven't seen anything by Ehteshaam in a long time. So maybe he came up with some brilliant responses. But the idea of the video is that, of course, everyone knows the Muhammad's Boom Boom Room now, but Muhammad is interviewing Stephen W. Hawking, and they get into some disagreements about science and Islam and Muhammad's scientific views, and Stephen W. Hawking's telling
Towards
Muhammad he
the
doesn't know what he's
bottom of
talking
the
about.
universe
But what's
is a
interesting
giant
is
fish
towards,
or well.
later for the
Sometimes
second half
that fish or well gets
is that
agitated.
we actually
And this is
make
what causes
Muhammad the hero
earthquakes. On
in
the back of
responding to some of Stephen Hawking's views about, truth and basically his theological views and so on. And so we kind of, if you wanted to attack a video, I don't know why you would attack this one. This is the one where we were actually making Muhammad look much, much smarter than Muhammad actually was. And so, yeah, but that's the idea.
Okay, Ehteshaam said, "What is this nonsense about my mom?"
That comes from you, Ehteshaam, not us. That's why you back. If someone, keep in mind, I was no part of that. I was no part of that conversation years ago when you're supposed to debate Anthony. So if it wasn't because your mom told you couldn't come, why did you back out of a debate that you had agreed to do? Was there some other reason and you just blamed your mom, or was it actually your mom, like you said back then, and you just forgot somehow?
All right, now I'm gonna say, people think I can be vicious or savage or something, but Ehteshaam, I'm not gonna.
What's that?
Let's try not to do mom jokes here today, guys. Nothing like that, okay? I'm not saying to my live chat. Let's show Ehteshaam love. Now, Ehteshaam, you do deserve a little bit of a loving, gentle, heavy hand because of the way that you mocked David and seemed to have some levity in regards to disabled children, especially. That's sort of the lowest of the low. And so I hope you understand that. But at the same time, Ehteshaam, we haven't met, although I apparently did fill in for you once on a debate. I love you. I'd be willing to talk to you. To be honest, in some ways you seem troubled, so I have concerns about you. I want you to be healthy and whole. And really that ultimately means that you embrace the gospel of Jesus Christ. Now, with that being said, we are going to look at the things you said in this video, and we're going to find out if what you said stacks up with the facts. So before I hit the play button, any comments, David or Anthony?
No, sir.
Nope.
All right. So here we go. Everyone in the live chat, you let me know if you can hear this. I want to make sure this can be heard properly. And you let me know if the video can be heard. If not, I will start it over again. So this is about a almost 8-minute video by Ehteshaam, where he is responding to this particular episode of the Boom Boom Room. Here it is.
Towards the bottom of the universe is a giant fish or well. Sometimes that fish or well gets agitated, and this is what causes earthquakes. On the back of the giant sea creature are 7 earths, all of which are flat. They're stacked up like pita breads, except that there's a 500-year journey in between each one of them. We live on the top earth, which again is flat. The sun and the moon chase each other around the earth.
David, you in a comment so far? Were you able to hear the audio or see it so far? Ehteshaam hasn't said anything, but it's 30 seconds in. We've done Quran 36, 38 through 40, Tirmidhi 3298.
Tirmidhi, yeah. No, the Muslim sources are one giant big disaster. I'm guessing. Again, I have not watched this. I'm guessing he's going to attack the sources, right? Because some of those come from like Tabari and stuff, and I'm guessing he's going to say, no, I only go with hadith methodology in which everything has to be traced back to a companion of Muhammad by this methodology or something like that. I'm guessing he's going to undermine the sources, not realizing that we believe that methodology is garbage, and the first few centuries of Muslims did not hold to the methodology that Muslims use today. There's a reason various Sirah scholars like Ibn Ishaq and Waqidi and Ibn Sa'd, and then you get all the way down to Tabari. There's a reason these guys were very, very popular Muslim historians. The Islamic methodology that is now used hadn't been standardized, right? So notice the method that Muslims use today doesn't come along. It's not standardized. It doesn't become the only Muslim way of doing things until 2 to 3 centuries after the time of Muhammad. That's when the Hadith scholars sort of seize power and start weeding the other guys out. But where in the world are you getting the idea that that is the methodology, right? What divine authority do Muslim Hadith scholars from 2 to 3 centuries after the events, on what basis do they get to say this is the only way to do history when there isn't a historian on the planet who would regard the Islamic methodology as anything other than complete nonsense and garbage, right? It is a silly, 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 childish way of doing history. And according to Muslim scholars, it's the only way to do history. And if you're not doing it that way, then you can't really know anything. Well, as long as you keep that in mind, keep in mind, I'm using Muslim sources. Ehteshaam today might throw out the sources, but everything I'm saying comes from Muslim sources. So, all right. That's all I have to say.
In fact, this part that he played was only 5 seconds. And I wrote down, I'm sorry, 30 seconds. I'm sorry, I inversed my numbers. 30 seconds, and yet there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sources, 5 sources, all Islamic sources that we bring up on the screen. Okay, so now let us hear what Ehteshaam has to say in response. And everyone, again, let me know, make sure that you can hear him loud and clear. By the way, Ehteshaam, nice shirt. I see you're a Flash fan, and that will actually come into play to a certain extent at one point in this video. So here we go.
Assalamu alaikum and hello to my non-Muslim viewers. David Wood, same David Wood who tried to kill his father with a hammer and was put into a mental hospital by his mother, has been making, this series called Muhammad's Boom Boom Room, where, he has some kid playing the Prophet Muhammad supposedly, and then, he brings up Hadith and Quran verses trying to make fun of the Hadith and Quran, and
hold on. Hey, what's funny just about that part? Isn't that funny?
There's several things that are funny, actually. First thing I was thinking of is that the other day you were called the other guy, and now you're called the kid. So
yeah. I'm
but
the kid.
Also, notice that Ehteshaam was going after David's mother. He brought up David's mother. You said we can't reference anyone's mother, and here's Ehteshaam already breaking the rules.
Wait.
Yeah. No. Notice now, guys. If we were to act like him, which I'm not opposed to doing, but I just have no interest in doing it now, right? Then every time we mention Ehteshaam, we should say. And so Ehteshaam, oh, I can't debate because my mommy told me I can't. Gulam, he said that I'm wrong about science in the Quran, right? That's what we have to do.
I'm sorry. All right, I'm going to play this again, and this time I'll let you. But I mean, why am I a kid? Some kid?
A little kid, man.
Some kid, he says.
That's because you color that gray out of your beard, man.
I guess that is, but I love how he's like, how he throws that in there like that is part of your name every time. It's pretty epic. Ehteshaam, if you have comments that are relevant, I will put them on the screen. I haven't seen you comment in a second. Where'd you go, brother?
He's looking up arguments to post.
Where?
Somebody.
Hey, maybe his mom. No, I don't want to.
I was already about to.
Nah, guys. All right, here we go. We want to play this again. This is a pretty classic video. No, Ehteshaam, I'm saying if you make a comment in the live chat, Ehteshaam, I'll be willing to put it on the screen for everybody to see. That's what I'm saying. So Ehteshaam, if you make a relevant comment, we're not going to block you, and we'll totally put your comment on the screen. That's what I'm saying, Ehteshaam. So just let me know if you want to. But here you go again.
Assalamu alaikum and hello to my non-Muslim viewers. David Wood, same David Wood who tried to kill his father with a hammer and was put into a mental hospital by his mother, has been making, this series called Muhammad's Boom Boom Room, where, he has some kid playing the Prophet Muhammad supposedly, and then, he brings up Hadith and Quran verses trying to make fun of the Hadith and Quran, and things like that, because either David Wood's too lazy to star in his own YouTube channel, or he's too busy I mean, given what I know about him, he's probably too lazy to start, so he hires these kids, these Christian kids, to, act in his stupid videos. But anyways,
David, break it down. Why are you so stupid and lazy, David?
Hang on, I haven't finished listening to the clip.
Oh, okay. Oh, man.
Yeah.
Why are you so stupid and lazy, man?
Yeah, I don't know, man. I was just born stupid and lazy.
Well, Ehteshaam, to be fair, he is from West Virginia, but that's no reason to say that about him. I'm just kidding. I'm so sorry. No, but it's like this is just begins with just insults, he's either too lazy or too busy to star in his own. I don't know, Ehteshaam. Haven't you seen any of the other Boom Boom Rooms? David is often the opposing character to whoever plays the Muhammad. By the way, the kid that plays that Muhammad character, I think, does a fantastic job. So
he does.
Yeah, he does. And so whoever, I mean, you see a lot of them ones where, David is playing on the opposite side. So, haven't you seen those, Ehteshaam? I don't know. It's weird. And by the way,
yeah, he should have loved. I mean, since he's a comic book guy, he should have loved the Joker episode.
Oh yeah. I bet Ehteshaam,
that should be his favorite episode of anything ever.
That'd be interesting, Ehteshaam. I'd be willing to bring you on the channel live, and you could do a live reaction on my channel to the Joker episode, and maybe bring in some of your comic book knowledge. That could be kind of fun, right? Mm-hmm. What do you think? I mean, first, make sure it's worked out with the powers that be. Just if you need to get a permission slip and show it on the screen or anything, I'll allow time for that as well. You just let me know. All right, so here we go. Let's continue on with the video. Speaking to David Wood, the one who tried to kill his own dad and his mom later on, put him in the mental hospital, was too stupid and lazy or busy to start his own YouTube videos. Here we go.
I'm going to be refuting. Muhammad's Boom Boom Room is like one of the worst ideas David Wood has ever come up with, and he's come up with pretty stupid ideas like crashing Isna, crashing the Arab Fest when the Arab Festival was going on in the late 2000s and the early 2010s. So he has these stupid ideas, but this is probably one of the stupidest. But anyways, I'm going to be refuting what is said in that video because.
So David Wood has a lot of stupid ideas, Ehteshaam says, but he says out of all of David Wood's stupid ideas, such as crashing the Arabic America Festival, these are his words, not mine. The Boom Boom Room is actually worse than what you did there, crashing the festival there. This is actually worse, he's saying. So by the way, Anthony, are you with us? I don't see you anymore.
I got a text from Anthony saying his computer froze and that he's got to reboot it.
Okay. I'll look for a call from him then. Okay.
Yeah. Why don't we ask the people in the chat what they think of Muhammad's Boom Boom Room and whether it is a horrible idea or one of the greatest ideas anyone in history has ever come up with. Which is it, ladies and gentlemen? Horrible idea or one of the greatest ideas anyone in history has ever come up with? Let us know.
All right, so Ehteshaam, again, we are 1 minute and 48 seconds into this video, Ehteshaam. Because Ehteshaam will watch this, and he's also was in the live chat earlier. All you've done is insult. Well, you insulted me. I'm the kid who's a paid actor, apparently.
But he says he's going to respond.
Yeah, he says he's going to respond. And then insulted David in multiple ways. And you played some of the clip. Now, hopefully you get past that to actually some of your responses. So we're going to hit play and see what happens.
He's saying that
what's up?
I'm just saying, I asked the question, and then the comments are, it's greatest idea. It's epic, best idea ever of all time. I love the Boom Boom Room. Greatest of all time YouTube ideas. Greatest idea ever. Amazing idea. Greatest idea. The greatest idea ever. Awesome idea. Greatest idea in history without a doubt. Boom Boom Room in 3 words. Best show ever. The best idea. Beyond awesome. Great idea. Greatest idea ever. The greatest idea. Gosh, it just keeps on going and going and going and going. If Ehteshaam were a movie reviewer on Rotten Tomatoes, this would be like 99%, and he would be the one critic who had to say, "Oh no, this movie's garbage," when everyone else says it's the greatest movie ever. Just so you know.
Yeah, I'm putting some of the comments on the screen. Here's Daj Mitch, who says Vocab needs an Oscar. Vocab needs an Oscar for Boom Boom Room acting greatness. So, you know, we could say this kid, this paid kid, needs an Oscar. Yeah, the Boom Boom. Yeah, so I mean, people seem to like it. People are watching it. I can think
it's comedic genius. Jim Farm says.
Yeah, I mean, I do know a few Christians who don't like it, but we won't mention that right now.
Yo. Hey, guys, there's a little distinction that we make. But how did he not mention Islamicize me? What the heck? Anyway.
Yeah, that's a good point. Maybe he hasn't seen it.
Yeah, just so everyone knows.
No. Oh, his channel is filled with Islamicize me refutations. I forgot to tell you.
Okay.
His channel
Never mind.
His channel was filled with Islamicize me refutations. I haven't really watched them.
I stand corrected.
You're right.
I'm sure.
He didn't
I'm sure
mention
his
it.
responses. I'm sure his responses have gotten dozens of views for how awesome they are.
You are right though. He doesn't mention it, which he should. He should be. You know.
Maybe he's acknowledged. Maybe he can't deny the awesomeness of Islamicize me because it was so awesome. By the way, everyone, we kind of use a distinction behind the scenes. It came from an Ice Cube interview. I was watching Ice Cube when he's being interviewed and he's being asked about splitting with NWA, and Ice Cube said, "Oh, it was awesome because." The producers for Public Enemy said they were gonna, produce my next album. They're gonna come up with all the beats and stuff. And then the reporter immediately asked and said, "How can that be a good thing when you lost Dr. Dre, like the best of all time? Like how can you lose Dr. Dre and think that something else is good?" And Ice Cube said, "Nah, see, Dre is a genius, but the Public Enemy guys were like mad scientists." And so that's a distinction that we make behind the scenes when we're making stuff. We distinguish between, hey, this is genius, and then all of a sudden we'll do something. We're like, no, this is mad scientist level right here. And we got some of that in Islamicize me. Some of that. I mean, the whole series was, the idea for the series. That's kind of mad scientist level, just like the Boom Boom Room. That's kind of mad scientist level. But in there you have good stuff, and then you have genius stuff, and then sometimes you get mad scientist level stuff. So.
Yeah, just to be clear, David is saying we make that. David is the one who always says that. He's like, see, there's genius, and there's mad scientist, and this is mad scientist. So he says it's we, but it's really just David kind of doing soliloquies about whatever we come up with that particular day. But okay, so let's continue on here. We're going to continue on and play. Well, let me take off. I'm going to make it where you can only see Ehteshaam. Well, man, I'm having trouble with my little camera swap. I don't see Anthony calling back. We'll get him back. Don't worry, ladies and gentlemen. We will work on getting him back. All right, here we go again with Ehteshaam.
Scientific errors in it, and I'm here to say that the Qur'an and the Hadith don't have any kind of scientific errors. So
the Qur'an and the Hadith don't have any scientific errors. The Qur'an and Hadith don't have any scientific, which I could be wrong, but I am not 100% sure if that is actually a word. But I know what he's trying to say, and we all have our days and our moments. But he's saying, I'm here to say the Qur'an and the Hadith don't have any scientific. Wait, did he say the Hadith too? Hold on, let me pull that back one more time.
The Hadith have scientific errors in it, and I'm here to say that the Qur'an and the Hadith don't have any kind of scientific errors.
Oh yeah, so he said the Qur'an and the Hadith don't have any scientific errors. So he's really he's raising the bar there. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. I didn't realize he was saying that. I didn't know he said both. Okay. Here we go. Come on. Here we go.
So let's go with the first source he claims. It's Al-Tabari, Volume 1, pages 218 and 220. Now,
so let's go with the first source he claims. Al-Tabari, Volume 1, pages 218 to 220. Let's see what he says.
Al-Tabari is not authentic. It's not an authentic source. If you go to
Al-Tabari is not authentic. It's not an authentic source.
Al-Tabari, Volume 1, pages.
So that well, let me play the rest. I'm gonna have him play the rest of this.
Did I nail it? By the way, did I nail it?
Yeah, that's exactly what you said he was gonna say, which is what he said. Yeah, so that's the first one. He has some other responses, but let's see what he says about it. How much detail he adds.
170 to 171. Al-Tabari warns people that his books are filled with weak and authentic narrations. So
he says it's because Al-Tabari warns people that his books are filled with incorrect accounts. That's what he said so far. Let's see if he adds.
Al-Tabari is definitely not a authentic source according to Muslim scholars.
So, and he says, according to Muslim scholars, it's also not an authentic source. So he gave two reasons why he's saying Al-Tabari is not an authentic source.
And again, if you read the beginning of Al-Tabari's book, Al-Tabari Volume 1, Al-Tabari warns people that his books are filled with weak and authentic narrations, and this narration is not authentic. I looked into it.
He said, again, he repeated himself, Al-Tabari warns people that it's filled with weak and inauthentic narrations, and he said, and this one is not an authentic narration. I looked into it. Let's see if he says anything else.
Al-Tabari Volume 1, pages 218, 220. It's not authentic. The next verse he said.
Okay, so that's the answer for the first thing. David, I don't know if you want to have specifics in response.
No, I'm having trouble because since there's like a 30-second lag, I'm trying to listen to him, but I'm hearing you at the same time. So, but you are kind of reviewing the statement. So he's just denying Al-Tabari. By the way, the reason Al-Tabari says that is because he knows he includes all sorts of embarrassing stuff, like the satanic verses, which by that time Muslims are starting to try to deny because it's embarrassing. And in his own defense, hey guys, I'm just passing on this information. So if you don't like anything here, no problem. I'm just recording the story. But look, if he wants to deny Tabari on the giant fish or whale at the bottom of everything, no problem. We'll go Ibn Abbas, right? So Tafsir of Ibn Abbas commenting on Surah 68 verse 1 says, Allah swears by the Nun, which is the whale that carries the earths on its back while in water, and beneath which is the bull, and under the bull is the rock, and under the rock is the dust, and none knows what is under the dust save Allah. So you have multiple sources on this. You have the sources that are recorded in At-Tabari, in the history of At-Tabari, but you also have the tafsir of Ibn Abbas, who's this is the granddaddy of all Quranic studies right here, and he's a companion of Muhammad. You have these teachings that go back to Muhammad's companions. You can trace them back, it's not wise, to Muhammad's companions, and they're total, utter nonsense. Now, what are we supposed to do? What are we supposed to do now? We're supposed to say, okay, just ignore all this stuff, and we'll pretend that later Muslims made all of this stuff up. And sorry, guys, you don't get to do that. If you want to throw out something that Tabari said when he's, I would say, certainly the greatest Muslim historian of the first few centuries, if you want to throw out what he said, and you want to throw it out even when it lines up perfectly with what Ibn Abbas said, if you want to just start throwing out what these guys said, guy, you have to throw out all of it, right? If you're saying we can't trust what this guy said because he's 2 centuries later and maybe he messed up, great, throw out all of your hadith, throw them all out. It's all garbage and nonsense according to you. Keep in mind what Ehteshaam is telling us now is that Muslims were making stories up about what Muhammad's companions were claiming, and that these were so widespread by the time you get to the time of people like Tabari, that people like Tabari couldn't tell the difference between a true story and a false story. And well, if that's the case, then you're telling us that in those multiple generations leading up to Tabari, the Muslim community was filled with liars who were making up stories about the creation, about Muhammad, about the foundation of everything, about what these verses mean, and they were so effective that they could attribute them to people like Ibn Masud, who Muhammad said, if you want to learn the Quran from anyone, learn it from Ibn Masud. They're attributing it to him. Ibn Abbas, all of these guys, they have all of these false stories attributed to them. What does that mean? That means that the early generations of Muslims, not according to us, I believe that this stuff does go back to these guys. But according to people like Ehteshaam, the early generations of Muslims were the biggest bunch of liars and fabricators the world has ever seen. Keep in mind, who's preserving the Quran during this time? The biggest bunch of liars the world has ever seen, according to Ehteshaam. Who's passing on all these stories? The biggest bunch of liars the world has ever seen. Guys, when you start saying this, when you start saying even our great historians were a bunch of liars and fabricators, and they couldn't get to the truth because so many generations of Muslims were doing nothing but lie, and you don't see what you're actually doing to your religion here, you can't build a good foundation of knowledge about Muhammad on a foundation of 2 centuries of the biggest bunch of liars the world has ever seen. So that would be my response right there.
Yeah, and a brief look at the internet about what other Muslims say about this collection. I want to draw everyone's attention to a website that's been on the screen. I just put on here while David was speaking so you guys can see it. SunniConnect.com. One place for authentic Islamic downloads upon the methodology of the final prophet Muhammad. History at Tabari. Okay, look what it says here. I want to draw your attention to this, what is said about this. And by the way, this is a place where you can also get it. Okay, we're going to read this right here, okay? Collecting all 40 volumes of the history of Al-Tabari, completed in 1999 by a distinguished group of Arabists and historians of Islam, the annotated translation of the history of Al-Tabari is arguably the most celebrated chronicle produced in the Islamic lands on the history of the world in the early centuries of Islam. The 39-volume set, published in the SUNY series in Near Eastern Studies under the general editorship of Professor Ishan Yarshater of Columbia University, is the only complete English translation. The history was published by SUNY Press between 1985 and 1999, with the index added to the set in 2007. It is essential and highly praised in Islamic studies. So, that's just one place, but it just seems like maybe people aren't really agreeing with him. And
no, Vocab, that's what I said. Even in Tabari's time, right? He's including stories that were incredibly embarrassing to Muslims, right? I mean, these things would have been like shattering the faith of Muslims by that time, because by the time of Tabari, that's where they've already begun the process of historical revision, weeding out things, right? Because basically, let me give you an example. During about the first 2 centuries of Islam, they had a doctrine of, it's called Ismat al-Anbiya, right? The God's protection of the prophets, right? But for those first 2 centuries, the doctrine of God's protection of the prophets meant that God is going to protect prophets from persisting in error, not from making an error, from persisting in the error, right? So a prophet could make an error, but God's going to bring him out of it later, right? So with that doctrine, that was perfectly consistent with the story of the satanic verses, where Muhammad promoted polytheism, he promoted shirk, he promoted idolatry with what are called the satanic verses. But then God sent Gabriel later on to tell them that he'd been tricked and fooled by Satan. And then Muhammad admitted that he'd fabricated verses and stuff, thus classifying him as a false prophet, according to Deuteronomy 18:20. But so notice, that's why for those first 2 centuries, you find all kinds of people reporting the historical incident of Muhammad delivering the satanic verses. After that time, the Islamic doctrine changed. The doctrine of God's protection of the prophets changed too. God's going to protect prophets from entering into any major error, right? God's not even going to allow it to happen. Well, if God's not going to allow it to happen, you obviously can't have Muhammad admittedly delivering revelations from Satan. And so then they have to weed those stories out, which is exactly what they did. So they start weeding these stories out because they were so embarrassing to Muslims. So that's what you find in Islamic history. You go to the early centuries and it's one big giant mess. And then you go later and they'll come up with some doctrine or some teaching, and then they have to start throwing out all of history. It's similar to, a more modern concept that the Quran has been perfectly preserved. You go to the early centuries of Islam, they have no idea what you're talking about. They're all talking about chapters coming up missing, large passages coming up missing, verses being eaten by a sheep. They're talking about all of these things. Suddenly, at some point, Muslims decide, nope, perfect preservation of the Quran, right down to the letter. And then what do they have to do? They have to throw out or explain away all of their sources saying that the Quran has been changed over and over and over again. So by the time you get to Tabari, they've already been doing the historical revision and throwing stories out. Tabari includes something like the satanic. He includes the satanic verses and so on. He knows that Muslims are going to be upset about this, and so as brilliant as he was in putting this together, and you got to be. I mean, keep in mind he basically wrote a history of the entire world from creation down to his time, and that's why it's 39 volumes. And what do Muslims say today? Nope, he's a liar. Can't trust him. He's garbage because the real reason is because he says all these things that we don't like, and our Muslim scholars have already thrown out by now. And so he said all these things, and so we can't trust him. So
all right, I'm gonna try to get Anthony back in. I'm having okay, there he is. Anthony, for some reason I don't see your I can hear your voice, but you don't have any camera. Is that right?
I see me. Oh, let's see.
Oh, there you go. There you go. Okay. Do you want to comment on anything? I know you kind of missed some of it. What's going on? Sorry.
So I don't know where you're at in the video, but I think I can kind of tell given what David has just said. I would add to what David said. Number one, remember something about the Islamic claim, at least at this point in history. It's that the Quran has these advanced scientific insights. One of our observations has always been in response to that, well, if the Quran already has these advanced insights, then why aren't Muslims finding out about them until after Western science or other scientists are discovering them?
Good point.
And see, what we're observing there is that what Muslims are doing is they're playing a game with the Quran. They're going back and making it fit what's now thought to be the case. And even some Muslims criticize that sort of thing. If you look at Ahmed van Denver's Ulum al-Quran, where he's talking about the science of Quranic interpretation, he points out the problematic nature of that. And I won't get into all that, but here's my observation. Notice how the early Muslims, even if you say all these hadith are weak, notice what all these other Muslims are concluding, who are Muslims, right? They have the Quran, and yet they're coming up with this idea that there are these 7 earths, they're flat, and they're stacked on top of, there's just this crazy convoluted notion of cosmology and geography and all of that. So the Quran apparently, which we should be able to assume they know Arabic, right? But they're apparently not coming to this conclusion. Even if you want to say these hadiths don't go back to Muhammad, you see, the Quran is still not accurately informing Muslims, and they're coming up with crazy and absurd ideas. Now, 2 other observations that I'd make. One, Tabari doesn't simply say that he's got just a bunch of bad narrations that are unreliable. The fact that Tabari includes all these narrations only tells us that if somebody wants to follow as David's already mentioned, we don't buy into all of their ideas of what's valid, or not valid in terms of historical criticism and so forth. But even by Islamic criteria, you can't just, as a Muslim, say, oh, it's in Tabari, it's weak, because Tabari doesn't say that his history only contains weak narrations. But moreover, even a da'if hadith, a weak hadith, is not rejected by Muslim scholars. I have a book here on the science of interpreting the hadith and hadith criticism by Muhammad Hashim Kamali. And he has a whole section in here on da'if hadith. I won't read the whole thing. But one of the things he points out here, and let me just read this for you, part of this. The leading imams, Abu Hanifa, Malik, Shafi'i, these are major founders of madhabs in Islam, the schools of jurisprudence. It says the leading imams have accepted the da'if, not only of the companion, in which one companion might have reported a hadith from a fellow companion and not directly from the Prophet, but also of prominent scholars of the tabi'un, the followers, such as, and then he gives a name and so forth. Now, what he's pointing out there is sometimes a Muslim will say a hadith narration is weak if you have one person narrating it from Muhammad when there has to have been some kind of a link in between them because this person couldn't have met Muhammad, right? He didn't live at the time of Muhammad. However, what he's saying is if you have a person who heard a hadith from somebody that he knew to have been reliable, and he heard it from Muhammad, he might just go around and say, Muhammad said this, instead of telling you the person who gave him the report. And so, again, according to the major founders of Islamic jurisprudence, a da'if hadith isn't simply rejected. Now, they go through all these other hoops in telling you how to, sift out, which da'if hadiths you can use, which ones you can't. And this is why Islam ends up becoming the religion of the scholars, not in the sense that Islam's a scholarly religion, but in the sense that no Muslim, rank and file Muslim, can simply claim that he knows his religion independently of what some scholar tells him. Because a scholar, this is their claim, a scholar has to tell him, whether this hadith is reliable, how it can be used, and so on and so forth. And I can assure you, and that with all due respect to Ehteshaam, since we are, trying to be charitable, with all due respect to Ehteshaam, he does not know the science of hadith criticism. He is not a hadith scholar. And by the way, he said, I don't know if it's come up in the video yet, he said that the Tirmidhi hadith, he looked into it, and it's da'if. If you go on sunnah.com, it says right there in big black letters, sahih, which means it's strong, it's sound. So I don't, I highly doubt that he seriously looked into the hadith reported by Al-Tabari and concluded on the basis of his hadith scholarship that hadith is even a weak narration.
I want to, Vocab, I just wanted to read this quotation from Tabari, which is what Muslims use to show you can't trust Tabari and everything he's reporting. He's saying, I'm including a bunch of false stories and stuff, and therefore you can't trust anything this guy says in his 39 volumes. This is what he says in his introduction. He says, the reader should know that with respect to all I have mentioned and made it a condition to set down in this book of ours, I rely upon traditions and reports which I have transmitted and which I attribute to their transmitters. I rely only very exceptionally upon what is learned through rational arguments and produced by internal thought processes. So he's saying, I'm not thinking through this myself. I'm just recording the stories. He says, for no knowledge of the history of men of the past and of recent men and events is attainable by those who were not able to observe them and did not live in their time, except through information and transmission provided by informants and transmitters. So there he's just saying, you can't figure out history just by thinking yourself. You can only figure out history by it being transmitted to you. This knowledge cannot be brought out by reason or produced by internal thought processes. This book of mine may be found to contain some information mentioned by us on the authority of certain men of the past, which the reader may disapprove of and the listener may find detestable because he can find nothing sound and no real meaning in it. In such cases, he should know that it is not our fault that such information comes to him, but the fault of someone who transmitted it to us. We have merely reported it as it was reported to us. Now, does this sound like a man who's saying, yep, I gathered a bunch of garbage stories and I'm here. What's he saying? He's saying, if you find, I put together this book. Everything I'm saying in this book was transmitted to us on the authority of the Muslims who passed this material down. If you want to say, hey, I don't believe this story, and you're about to come after me and blame me, guys, I didn't come up with this. Blame the transmitters, blame someone else if you think that something on here is wrong. There's nothing in here about him saying, hey, you can't trust anything I wrote in the book. He's resting the authority on the Muslim transmitters who came before him. In case you have a problem with something like the satanic verses, you don't run up to Tabari and say, I'm going to kill you for saying that Muhammad delivered revelations from the devil. You say, Tabari's just passing on a story that he heard from other people. And notice the Islamic reasoning here. Tabari says that, hey, the authority of all these stories rests on people who came before me. So if you don't like something, if you find something detestable, as he says, then don't blame me. Blame the guys who before me. Blame the guys who came before me. So don't kill me over this stuff. And what's the interpretation according to Ehteshaam? Therefore, anything in these 39 volumes that I don't like, I can throw out based on that. Welcome to the Islamic mode of thinking. Why does this religion make people think like this? Interesting stuff. All right.
Yeah, it seems clear when you're hearing this that the guy is saying, I'm trying to be a faithful relayer of history, and this history is told to me by Muslims. And if there's stuff in here you don't like, it's not because I'm inventing something or anything like that. This is what I've heard from Muslims about this. And so the way, again, Ehteshaam, all due respect to you, the way you described Al-Tabari is not really true to what he was really saying. And if people just read what you say, I think they'll be able to see that pretty fast. So
hey, it's his new name will be Ehteshaam. I throw all earlier Muslim historians under the bus because I don't like what they say about my prophet Gulam.
Yeah. I'm going to play some more of this. I think we may have listened to some of this, but I'm going to see which parts. Let me bring up the volume here again and unmute this
video, because he's saying that the Quran and the Hadith have scientific errors in it, and I'm here to say that the Quran and the Hadith don't have any kind of scientific errors. So let's go with the first source he claims. It's Al-Tabari, Volume 1, pages 218 and 220. Now, Al-Tabari is not authentic. It's not an authentic source. You know, if you go to the history of Al-Tabari, Volume 1, pages 170 to 171, Al-Tabari warns people that his books are filled with weak and authentic narrations. So Al-Tabari is definitely not a authentic source according to Muslim scholars. You know, and again, you know, if you read the beginning of Al-Tabari's book, Al-Tabari Volume 1, you know, Al-Tabari warns people that his books are filled with weak and authentic narrations, and this narration is not authentic. I looked into it. You know, Al-Tabari Volume 1, pages 218, 220. It's not authentic. The next verse he cites is the Quran, chapter 65, verse 12, where he says, where the verse talks about 7 earths, or an earth like ours and stuff like that. 7 earths may be true. There are other planets and galaxies in the universe. It's possible there's an earth like ours, and it's possible there's life on those planets. This can't be disproven. So if the Quran's talking about, you know, other planets, 7 planets like ours and stuff, it's very possible. It's possible that there's intelligent life. You know, how do humans know that we're the only ones on Earth and there's no other Earth, you know, in the galaxies or in the universe? The universes, you know, how do we know that? We don't know that. We don't know that for sure. So, I mean, the Quran verse can't be disproven. It's also possible we live in a multiverse. You know, there's like another version of me, you know, and there's another version of you. There's like a white version of me and like a black version of you or something. I don't know. Like, you know, like who knows what goes on outside of our universe, right? So, I mean, you know, I'd like to, you know, there's like another version of me.
Okay, so let's deal with the latter part first there, which is pretty fascinating, because what Ehteshaam says here is really twofold. He says, well, the latter part, let's deal with that first. The latter part, he is saying that we could live in a multiverse. And so just like in DC, you know, so he has a Flash shirt on. So I think he's drawing inspiration from his love of comic books. And so in DC, there's Earth 1, there's Earth 2, and there's all these different numbers. And some people have even got exposed to this sort of on a more mainstream level if they watch such shows as the WB's Flash show, where they explore this. And sometimes there'll be other flashes from other universes that Barry Allen will interact with and things like that. So he says, actually, we could live in a multiverse, and so there could be multiple, there could be 7 Earths. So here, because it's in the Quran, he doesn't deny the authenticity of it. Obviously, it's Quranic. It's not Hadith. So he doesn't take that approach, although I have a feeling that if this was a Hadith, his response would be to just say, well, it's inauthentic. But instead, he says, number one, we could be in a multiverse. And then the second thing is, oh, did I say WB? Sorry, Nicholas, you're right. CW. I don't know what I'm talking about. Yeah. Okay. Hayden, you're right. CW. Oh my goodness. So we got a lot of nerds in here. Yeah. And then the other thing he says is, you know, we haven't explored everywhere, and so there could be 7 Earths, and there could be, you know, other life forms there and things like that. So, David, do you think there is actually a universe in which there is do you think it's possible that there's a place that there's a Filipino version of you, David?
Wait. It's even better than this. According to Ehteshaam, if his theory is correct, there could be a black Muhammad out there.
Oh!
What do the Hadith sources say about anyone who says Muhammad is black?
Yep.
Wait, hold on. That's good. I didn't think about that. Do you guys catch that?
Yeah. But if he's talking about alternative universes and so on, there could be a universe where Muhammad is a pig. Right? If you're just saying what's possible, is there a possible world where there are these pig people and Muhammad is the pig prophet? Yeah. What in the world? What in the world are you talking? He's talking about alternative universes.
No. We could live in a multiverse. We could live in a multiverse.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
So multiverse. That means there are other universes, and he's saying, well, maybe there's one in this. Well, maybe there's one in that. Well, yeah, maybe there's one where Muhammad is a pig, and that pig is owned by me, and I cook and eat the pig, right? If you're saying maybe, right? Maybe the Filipino David Wood in this alternative universe gets the Muhammad pig, cooks the Muhammad pig, and eats it and absorbs its prophetic power. If you're just mindlessly speculating, we can say all kinds of things, and I could go with this all. I could go with this all day.
Make sure that you crush its aorta first. So, Anthony, your camera disappeared again, but do you think it's possible there's somewhere in the universe where you're not Italian?
Well, no, but
exactly. That's what I was going to say. I'm Italian in every iteration of the multiverse there is. Don't you feel the same way, bro?
Yeah. But
hey, Paisan.
I think there are several things. One, I just want to make sure everybody's clear on what I was saying about a black Muhammad. The Islamic sources say anyone who says that Muhammad is black is to be killed, and so that was my reference there. So Ehteshaam, by Islamic strictures, should be given the the Italian necktie, or is that a Cuban necktie? Anyways, but the other thing is it's clear that Muhammad is not talking about a multiverse. Muhammad is talking about 7 Earths that exist in this, time-space continuum. He's talking about these things being 500 years apart and that sort of thing. And he's talking about these things resting upon each other. This isn't technically or really what people are talking about when they're talking about a multiverse, or what he's seeing in The Flash when it's talking about alternate, Earths.
Now,
and really, he's been watching too much cartoons, guys. Someone else in some other universe. That's not me. You guys know that, right? That's not me, right? He lives in it now. He's evaluating Muslim sources through the lens of comic books, right? And he watches The Flash. He watches The Flash and he sees, oh, there's a different Barry Allen in this universe, and a different Barry Allen in that universe, and a different Barry Allen in there. Well, gosh, maybe everything's like that. Maybe that's what Muhammad meant. Maybe that's what Muhammad meant in the Qur'an, where he talks about the seven Earths. Maybe it's 7 Earths and 7 different universes, and maybe we're different races in those. Guys, we've got someone who has the mentality of someone who watches The Flash and interprets his theology through the lens of one of the stupidest shows I've ever seen in my entire life. But I guess if you
is the Flash naive?
Yeah, the Flash is pretty bad. But I guess if you've been reading the Muslim sources all your life, the Flash is like, that's like Mozart, right? And so of course you take that as your theological paradigm.
Barry Allen, peace be upon him. Tippy Bear says. No, but someone else asked, is the Flash naive?
Well, apparently Tabari is off the table, but the Flash isn't. I guess the point there.
I wonder what Ehteshaam would say the fact that Superman was created by a couple Jewish kids from Cleveland.
You just destroyed all his faith in Islam, man. He destroyed his confidence in Islam because all of his beliefs about Islam were through the lens of comic books. And now, oh gosh, dude, you're messing up Ehteshaam, man. He's hurting now.
Well, to be fair, he gave 2 reasons. So the other reason was we don't know because we haven't discovered everything. You guys, that was the first part of his response. So what do we?
That brings up something that I was thinking about. That the claim is that the Quran has these advanced insights into science. At this point, he's defending the Quran by saying we simply don't know, as if this is a revelation of the Quran yet to be discovered. The problem is, if you actually look at Surah 65:12, this is not a revelation. Muhammad is not bringing something new, and this fact is actually observed by Islamic scholars. If you look at Surah 65:12, it says, Allah is he who created the seven heavens. In other words, the subject of the verse is Allah being the one who created them. He's not revealing that there are seven heavens and seven earths. That's taken for granted. That's something that everybody already knew. What Muhammad is doing is he's saying Allah is the creator of them. In other words, those earths, those heavens that you already know about. And that's why, in fact, when you look at the Hadith, Muhammad actually gets this idea from a Jewish person, right? This is in Sahih Bukhari, volume 1, number 5, or book 5, number 277. It says, the Prophet said, the people of Bani Israel used to take, this is a different Hadith. I was looking at a different one earlier about Muhammad running away from a stone. I was thinking, gosh, this isn't the same Hadith. But anyways, the Hadith that actually mentions the seven earths, here it is. This is from...
While you're finding that real quick, shout out to the super chatters. I am sorry that I've missed some of you. Shout out to Not a Verse, one of the super chatters. It says, yeah, but you guys got to admit that Muhammad was a special multitasker. I mean, he was able to give Khadija a lap dance while playing peekaboo with Jabril. Oh, my goodness. Credit where credit is due, fellas. I read that because it was a super chat, but it's quite a fascinating comment. And shout out also to Tippy Bear for the super chat. I apologize if I've missed a couple people on the super chat. I'm going to go back and try to look. Maybe Nate or D-New or Rox, whoever was up in here, could help me not miss any more. But go ahead, Brother Anthony.
Yeah, so it's volume 6, book 60, number 335. It says, narrated Abdullah, a Jewish rabbi came to Allah's apostle, and he said, O Muhammad, we learn that Allah will put all the heavens on one finger and the earths, plural, on one finger, and the narration goes on. So my observation here is this was already a belief current at the time. This is not new information that Muhammad is revealing. And so even Ehteshaam's idea that this is something that Muhammad could be right about, as if it's a revelation that could be discovered later in the future to be true scientifically, simply is wrong. It was a popular belief among Arabs at the time. So this is Muhammad incorporating already existing fables, not giving us advanced scientific insights.
Let me go ahead and since Anthony went to a hadith, let me go ahead and read another Sahih Muslim, number 3925. Muhammad ibn Ibrahim said that Abu Salama reported to him that there was between him and his people dispute over a piece of land, and he came to Aisha and mentioned that to her, whereupon she said, Abu Salama obtained from getting this land, for Allah's messenger said, he who usurps even a span of land will be made to bear around his neck 7 earths. So these 7 earths are something that Allah can slap around your neck if you disobey him. But notice, it doesn't make sense if they're in, so Ehteshaam, do you believe that when Allah is going to put all 7 earths around your neck, they're in all the universes, do you believe you're going to have a crisis on infinite neck ring earth situation? Is that what you believe you're going to have? That Allah is going to unite all these universes and multiverse to put all these earths around a person's neck? By the way,
your mic is breaking up a little bit, David. Anthony's signal's fine, but David's I heard it might be on my my end, but Anthony's fine. But I was
how is it? How is it now?
Okay, sometimes
you hear me now?
Yeah, but it's still breaking up in that weird way. I think there's gin in your mic. Let me see here. Maybe if I
let me see.
Sometimes if I kill the camera temporarily, it'll like you know what I mean. It'll like.
I'm gonna find out. I'm gonna find out if it's my end or your end.
Yeah, well, either way, I was breaking up though, but shoot, we'll try to come back to that. All right, let me play this. Let me play the next part. I'm sorry about that. It was a little choppy. It still kind of is. All right, let me see playing the next part of Ehteshaam's argumentation. Here we go.
You know, and there's another version of you. There's like a white version of me and like a black version of you or something. I don't know. Like, you know, like who knows what goes on outside of our universe, right? So I mean, you know, I'd like to, you know, one day have confirmation of the multiverse or life on other planets. That would be pretty awesome. But this can't be disproven, so the Qur'an's not in error here. Then he cites Al-Tabari, Volume 1, pages 207 and 208. Again, I looked at those sources. They're weak. They're not authentic according to according to Muslim scholars. So there's weak narrators in the isnad, or the chain of transmission. That makes the whole narration weak. Then he mentions Al-Tabari.
Oh, he does the same thing again. Then when he comes to the next part of Al-Tabari, where he mentioned Volume 1, pages 207 to 208, he just says basically his same response that he gave for the first one. Let's see, Anthony. Let me try you first, and then see if we can get David sound a little bit better. Anthony, did you hear what he said there?
Yeah, he's repeating himself.
Yeah.
So it basically goes back to the same points. Number one, Tabari doesn't simply say that he's including weak narrations; he's including everything. Number two, even if it were weak, that wouldn't mean that it's not relevant. What they're calling weak, all it takes to be weak is that one person in the chain isn't mentioned. But if we just throw it out, then you have to say the person who is mentioned after Muhammad is unreliable. Which is problematic, because now you've got Muhammad's followers, who are the people, you know, even in those other chains where the link is supplied, if the person they're saying is unreliable now appears in that chain, then those hadith have to go out. You know, and then of course, you know, all the other stuff that David mentioned. And again, with all due respect to Ehteshaam, I really don't believe that he did the work that's involved, that hadith scholars go through to sift out what they think is reliable from what's unreliable. You know, I'm not chopping him down by saying this. I realize that, you know, in order, from a Muslim perspective, in order for somebody to be considered a hadith scholar, you know, it's not some guy grabbed a couple of books and, you know, came to a conclusion about something. You know, Ehteshaam is completely beholden to his superiors to be able to tell him whether or not a hadith can be discounted or not. And I think there's some you know, implicit evidence of this. You know, if he had the evidence that it was weak, he would have supplied it. And therefore, I do think that the fact that he didn't is telling. You know, and he says he's going to respond to this. So I'd love for him to supply the scholars who specifically say that the hadiths mentioned, or the narrations mentioned on page 207 and 208, are not valid.
Right, yeah. Well, he just says he looked into it, but I mean, it's kind of weird if he's saying Al-Tabari is basically he tried to make it where he discounted the entire thing, but I'm trying to understand if he's basically saying, hey, it's all no good. Why is he looking into any particular given one to see if whether it's reliable or not? I mean, why would you need to look if you're saying, you know, Al-Tabari mentioned it's filled with inauthentic stuff? Or is he just trying to like kind of poison the well, it seems like there, and then it goes look for a specific one, but it's I don't know, man. It's tough sledding. Yo. Yeah. Let's see if we can hear you.
Yo. How's it sound now?
So far, so good.
So far, so good. I just wondered if you, because what, is it breaking up again?
Yeah. It was okay on little statements. Let me it's not ideal because I don't know if I can kill your camera. Can you take away your camera for a second and just see if I can hear you, and I'll put Anthony's beautiful face on the screen. Sometimes I've noticed sometimes that helps it. You just do the little button where it has camera and it'll go out. Maybe that'll work where I could hear you.
Let me see.
Sometimes I can do it on my end, but I cannot do it on my end right now with these. Let me see if I can here. Let me try to do something here. Let me try. Okay. Let me see. I I turned my video off. Okay, let me see if I turn my video, if that works, if that helps in some way. Go ahead.
Go ahead. What? Check one. Check one.
So far, you sound good. All right, what you got, David?
All right, you go ahead and tell me when there's a problem. But really, this should tell you everything, right? When he reads a passage from Tabari, who compiled 39 volumes of history to put together so Muslims would have an entire history of the world. And he says, I'll quote this again because this is massively important. When he says, the reader should know that with respect to all I've mentioned and made it a condition to set down in this book of ours, I rely upon traditions and reports, which I have transmitted and which I attribute to their transmitters. I rely only very exceptionally upon what is learned through rational arguments and produced by internal thought processes. For no knowledge of the history of men of the past and of recent men and events is attainable by those who were not able to observe them and did not live in their time, except through information and transmission provided by informants and transmitters. Can't learn history except for people who are transmitting it. This knowledge cannot be brought out by reason or produced by internal thought processes. This book of mine may be found to contain some information mentioned by us on the authority of certain men of the past, which the reader may disapprove of and the listener may find detestable, because he can find nothing sound and no real meaning in it. In such cases, he should know that it is not our fault that such information comes to him, but the fault of someone who transmitted it to us. We have merely reported it as it was reported to us. Tabari doesn't say one word about, this may contain all sorts of false stuff. He says, you, the reader, may find stuff in here that you find detestable, and you can't find any reason for why this should be in there. Just know I'm getting this from the transmitters. Ehteshaam looks at that and says, therefore, Tabari is admitting that you can't really trust anything in his source, and so I can throw out anything I don't like from the entire history of Tabari, anything that's embarrassing, anything that refutes my view of the Qur'an and of Muhammad. And if that's his method, that should tell you something. And what it should tell you is you need to watch out for someone who basically can't even read words off a page without twisting them to fit his own agenda, right? So notice, this is what happens. This is what always happens. We read words off the page and we assume these words mean what they say, and then we criticize Islam based on what the texts say. Then Muslims come along and they reinterpret everything. They reinterpret the clearest commands and claims of Allah. They reinterpret the clearest claims of Muhammad. They reinterpret the clearest claims of their historians. All this man is saying is, hey, all these stories were passed on to me. You don't like it. Don't blame me. Blame the people who passed it on to me. Takeaway message, throw out all 39 volumes. You can't trust them. Guys, this should tell us about, one is, Islam, because this is so common in Islam. But if we're talking about Ehteshaam, this, again, I haven't watched the video, but I'm guessing this is all he's going to do. There are no scientific errors. Why? Because I can throw out everything about scientific errors. And the Quran is so horrible and unclear that once you throw out all the commentaries and all the seerah and all the hadiths, and you throw out everything, and all you're left is the least clear book in history, then it's pretty easy to say, oh, when Allah says that stars are missiles that Allah uses to shoot demons, he really means this other thing, and you can't prove him wrong. And when he says 7 Earths, maybe he's talking about the multiverse, and there's 7 different Earths with 7 different flashes and so on. And so you can do anything. And so this is what, it's obviously the methodology. And the fact that Islam relies on this methodology to claim perfect preservation, brilliant scientific insights. Muhammad is the greatest man ever. This constant denying the sources and throwing all of our historians and hadith collectors under the bus. Wow, man, how do I sign up for this religion here? Yo. By the way, there was a. If that was all clear, let me just read the hadith that I quoted earlier that was apparently broken up. It's short. This was Sahih Muslim 3925. Muhammad ibn Ibrahim said that Abu Salama, blah, 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 blah. Let me go to the end. For Allah's messenger said, he who usurps even a span of land would be made to wear around his neck the 7 Earths. So he's talking about the 7 earths, and if Allah's going to punish you, Ehteshaam, by putting the 7 earths around your neck, and those 7 earths are in different universes, then are you saying that you need some sort of crisis on infinite earths to bring all these different earths together so that Allah can do what he says here? It just doesn't. When he's talking about these 7 earths, and we could go through a bunch of passages, because it's not just Ibn Abbas and others talking about the 7 earths being these flat things stacked up like pancakes. You have the 7 earths mentioned in various hadith collections, and so if there just aren't if these 7 earths are these other dimensional things or different galaxies or whatever it is, I'll just say Muhammad and his companions were the worst communicators of all time, if that's what they mean.
Yes, indeed. Well, Anthony, I'm going to let you get the comment first on the next one, because that's sort of a repeat, and we'll continue on here with Ehteshaam's response, because he says he refuted this episode of the Boom Boom Room. This particular one is the one with Stephen Hawking. Here we go. Let's see what he has to say.
I'm sorry, he mentions hadith. He mentions the Tirmidhi hadith number 3298. However, I looked at this hadith, I looked into this hadith, and I found out that hadith is weak according to Tirmidhi himself.
So, recap, he's saying, I looked into Tirmidhi 3298, and according to Tirmidhi himself, this hadith is weak. Let me see what else he says about it.
The Tirmidhi, volume 6, pages 23 to 25, that hadith.
Volume 6, pages 320, 325. Okay, I'm writing it down.
Is daif. Daif means weak, so it's not authentic, according to Tirmidhi, volume 6, pages 23 to 25. So it's not all authentic hadith. It's weak hadith. So the Prophet Muhammad didn't say anything scientifically erroneous. Then he mentions Qur'an.
Oh, okay, that's it for that. He's saying that seems to indicate that if this hadith is not weak, I'm using his own presupposition here, that Muhammad would have been saying something, I'll use his phrase here, scientifically inaccurate, because he's saying that he looked into it. Tirmidhi himself admits this is a weak one, and so Muhammad did not say anything incorrect here. Did I do that right, Anthony Rogers?
Yeah, so interestingly, in the video, you guys are just putting up a few references just to show that this is actually found in the Islamic sources. And in most of those cases, you can always put more, right? I mean, there's really no end in the case of certain things of references to them in relevant Islamic literature. In this case, there's more than the hadith that was put there. But just to focus on that one, there's actually 2 hadiths back to back, 3238 and 3239, which he said are da'if. And I'm looking at them right here on the screen. I wish I could show it to you. I have it pulled up. And this is the Darussalam edition, and it's got in big black letters Sahih. For both of them, not just for one of them.
Are you on a PDF or are you on a website?
I'm on Sunnah.com. So
all right, well, here, can you send me the? I can pull it up on the screen while you're talking about.
Guys, in Ehteshaam's defense, in the print Darussalam edition, it does classify them as daif. Although I have to be suspicious. I have to be suspicious of whether they're classifying it as daif because it's so obviously false.
Yeah. So I just sent him the link. And by the way, that actually brings up another issue. Islamic scholars are not unanimous when it comes to sound, strong, weak hadiths. The classifications of various scholars vary, and it usually varies according to their own theological conclusions or jurisprudential conclusions. If this hadith doesn't work with this conclusion that they want to reach, they'll throw it out. And so it's not surprising that you might find it somewhere classified as da'if. But then I would say, so number one, you've got these Muslim scholars saying that it is sahih. And even those Muslims that would classify it as da'if, that does not mean that the hadith is not reliable. It's simply a way of classifying them and telling Islamic scholars, something about the isnad of the hadith, and then in light of that, they have to make certain decisions about how that hadith can be used. Some Muslims will say things like, well, if the hadith has this issue, then we can use it for this, but we can't use it for that. So, for example, a Muslim will say you can't base an issue of Aqidah, for example, that's creed, with respect to Allah and his attributes, unless it goes back to Muhammad, right? It has to go back to Muhammad. You can't refer to Allah by any name that wasn't used for Allah by Allah or by Muhammad, as an example. That doesn't mean, though, that they didn't use narrations that went back to a companion but not Muhammad on other matters. And it also didn't mean that a hadith that goes back to Muhammad but doesn't mention every person in the chain was just thrown out. They have their own little ways of trying to organize these things. And like I said, it often is determined not so much by what can be proven by objective means to be reliable, but what is determined to be true by virtue of whether it agrees with our conclusion or not. And so I don't know what, it'd be interesting to see what Ehteshaam was looking at if he saw something that said da'if. Because
wait, 1 second here. 1 second here.
I got on the screen, by the way, now. So it's your face, and then it's
the Sunnah.com might be using the different numbering system. Might be using because you notice you have two numbers down there, the English reference and the Arabic reference. If that's my only concern is that if that's Darussalam, I've got the PDF version of Darussalam, and so you might be using a different numbering system. But those aren't even the
Yeah, in this hadith, 32:38, it says, a Jew came to the Prophet and said, O Muhammad, Allah will seize the heavens upon a finger, the mountain upon a finger, the earths, plural, upon a finger. And then the next hadith is basically, it only says, so the Prophet laughed in amazement and approval, which is a way of saying this is a duplicated hadith, but this is an additional statement to that hadith. And so both of those are graded sahih and refer to plural earths. So.
Oh, yeah. I think he's referring to the hadith that says that the earths are stacked up on top of each other and that there's this 500-year journey between them. So it's interesting
But he said Tirmidhi. Is there a hadith in Tirmidhi talking about them stacked upon each other?
Well, it says there's a 500-year journey. Muhammad says, what's beneath you? And he says he says the earth, and then what's beneath that, and then it's another earth and another earth and another earth and another earth and another earth. So I think he's criticizing that. The problem is, even though in the Darussalam edition it's da'if, you have, of course, you have a bunch of sources claiming that there are these 7 earths and that they're flat. So
I have a hadith here from Ibn Abbas that says 7 earths, but they are flat.
Yeah, that's the tafsir of Ibn Abbas, and then Tabari. Once you stop throwing out Tabari and stop lying about what he said. He says the same thing. They are 7 earths, but they are 7 earths that are flat, and they're islands. They're shaped like islands, and so you end up, whether you go here or there or to the hadith or wherever, you end up with these 7 earths that are like giant pancakes stacked on top of each other. How in the world are you saying maybe they're in different parts of the different parts of the universe, or in different universes altogether? Well, notice you throw out everybody. Ibn Abbas, liar, can't trust him. Tabari, liar, can't trust him. Hadith, Tirmidhi, you can't trust the sources. Once again, Ehteshaam is saying that those first several generations of Muslims were absolutely filled with liars. And what are they doing? They're coming up with these stories for no apparent reason, attributing them to all sorts of different authors. And notice what he has to grant. He has to grant that those generations of Muslims were too stupid to point out all the lies, right? Someone would come up and say, I have a story. Hey, Ibn Abbas told me that, the 7 earths, they're stacked up like flat, they're flat like pancakes and so on. And people are too stupid to challenge him. And so it gets passed on. Ehteshaam, your religion is based on a foundation of complete lies, according to you. And again, who are the same guys who are preserving the Qur'an during this time? Who are the same people who are preserving the so-called authentic teachings of Muhammad? The same people that you accuse of lying left and right, like it's an Olympic sport. So, boy, keep in mind, there's a price to be paid for throwing everyone under the bus here.
Yeah, let's see here. I found one of the sections I think that's relevant. Let's see here what it says. I'm gonna read it real quick.
Side note, Anthony. That hadith about the that one certainly sahih. That the hadith about the five Allah's five fingers. That's another passage for your teachings on Muhammad. I mean on Allah, the man God. You know what I mean? You know what I mean, Anthony? Allah's five fingers.
Yeah. Sorry, I had my my mute on.
What the heck?
Yeah. So interestingly enough, you know, in this particular hadith, I've been doing some interesting study on things related to the hadith and what Muhammad was doing. And one of the things I ran across recently is a paper written by a Jewish scholar. Muslims will love this. Written by a Jewish scholar and, in fact, a woman. So she's got two strikes against her, right? But her name is Livnat Holtzman, and she has this great 70-page scholarly article on the significance of Muhammad's gestures in relaying hadiths. And one of the things she points out is this whole history of discussion about certain gestures. But the one I was looking at recently concerns Muhammad saying that Allah, it talks about the verse in the Qur'an where it says that Allah is hearing and seeing. And it says when Muhammad spoke about this, he put his thumb on his ear and his index finger on his eye while he was narrating it. And she points out that this was understood by the vast majority of Muslim scholars as a way of indicating that Allah literally has an ear, Allah literally has an eye. And in this case, one of the things we know about some of the medieval Jews is that they actually had an anthropomorphic conception of God. Medieval Jews or post-Christian Talmudic Jews aren't the same thing as pre-Christian Jews. And so when you look at the Jews at the time of Muhammad, the Islamic sources are actually being accurate when they describe them, talking about God putting things on his finger and talking about how many things he can fit on his finger and all that kind of stuff. That was actually one of their beliefs. And the reason I bring it up here is because the hadith I read earlier, you remember I said at the conclusion of it that Muhammad smiled and laughed, showing his approval. So it's a Jew who's saying that Allah has these five fingers and he's fitting things on them, and Muhammad is laughing, indicating his approval. So Muhammad is agreeing with a Jew who has an anthropomorphic conception of God, thus showing that he himself holds the same conception.
Shout out for the super chats to Dr. Funny, Mr. Phil Fox, and also to Tatiana and the Synagogue, Benjamin White, Cheryl R, Radical Love. Liza, did I really miss all those super chats? Oh my goodness, guys. Thank you so much for the super chats. And I'm sorry I missed. It's hard to run this show with these two guys, and then I'm looking at the super chats and da-da-da. I'm so sorry. So again, shout out to Cheryl, shout out to Radical, Dr. Funny, Mr. Phil Fox, Tatiana, Synagogue, Benjamin White, yeah, and Liza for letting me know. Okay, you guys ready to watch some more Ehteshaam here? All right, I got to see where we left.
And this is what causes earthquakes. On the back of the giant sea creature are 7 earths, all of which are flat. They're stacked up like pita breads, except that there's a 500-year journey in between each one of them. We live on the top earth, which again is flat. The sun and the moon chase each other around the earth.
He took off that next line, which was like much like Aisha and I or something like that. Okay.
I'm sorry, he mentions hadith. He mentions the Tirmidhi hadith number 3298. However, I looked at this hadith, I looked into this hadith, and I found out that hadith is weak according to Tirmidhi himself. According to Tirmidhi, volume 6, pages 23 to 25, that hadith is da'if. Da'if means weak, so it's not authentic. According to Tirmidhi, volume 6, pages 23 to 25, so it's not all authentic hadith. It's weak hadith. So the Prophet Muhammad didn't say anything scientifically erroneous. Then he mentions Quran chapter 36, verse 38 to 40. However, this verse was incorrectly interpreted. As this verse is saying that the sun and the moon have orbits, and that's true. Just look it up. Just do a Google search, and then I don't know, like 2 seconds later, you'll find that the sun and the moon do have orbits, right? They don't stand still, they do orbit. So this is basic science. The Quranic verse doesn't say that the sun and the moon orbit around the earth. That's David Wood's own interpretation of the verse, or Vocab, Malone, whoever wrote that, whoever wrote that stupid script, they're putting their own interpretation into the Quran. That's not how it works. The Quran, chapter 36, verse 38 through 40, says that the sun and the moon have orbits, and that's true. The Quran does not say that the sun and the moon revolve around the earth or orbit around the earth. So he's putting words into the Quran which aren't really there. So he's making up stuff, and he's making up his own subjective reasoning. He's putting it into the Quran. That doesn't work. If you read the Quran, chapter 36, verse 38 to 40, even if you read it in English, it says the sun and the moon orbit, and that's true. They run their course. That's true. And the Arabic, the Arabic clearly implies that the sun and the moon have their own independent orbit, not orbit around the earth. That's an incorrect statement that he's saying, or he's misinterpreting, or he's putting his own subjective reading into the text, which he shouldn't do if he's being honest. But Dave Wood being honest is it's not possible, right? So anyways, so in conclusion, Dave.
It's not possible for David Wood to be honest. So he says there that the problem is that David Wood is interpreting the Quran incorrectly. He's saying there that it's obvious that the sun and the moon do run their course, so they have orbits, but it's not saying what you said in the script, whoever wrote that stupid script. And I thought it was nice that time he mentioned my name instead of just that kid who plays Muhammad. He mentioned my name, so that was nice. So I appreciate that. So
he does know you.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Ehteshaam. Thank you. All right, so David Wood, why aren't you interpreting the Quran correctly? And Fred Sanford wants to know, is there a possible universe within the multiverse in which you are actually honest?
No, there is not. I might be Filipino in a different universe. I might have a pig named Muhammad in a different universe, but I can't be honest. And because if Ehteshaam is coming up with the definition of what's honest and dishonest, I'm always in every universe going to just simply read words off a page and say, okay, what is the obvious meaning of these words? And according to Muslims, that's lying. What you need to do is completely reinterpret the words so that they mean absolutely nothing that they look like they mean. The key here is what Muslims want us to believe is that Allah, who claims throughout the Quran, like a beating drum, that his words are clear, that everything he says is clear. The only thing that's not clear are some theological claims, but everything he is teaching apart from that is clear. Then what Muslims have to say is Allah was just wrong about all of that stuff, because they have to constantly reinterpret what Allah meant. He couldn't have meant this. But let's go ahead and read the passage real quick. So Surah 36, verses 38 to 40. And the sun runs its course for a period determined for it. And the obvious interpretation you find in the Quran is the course of the sun, right? Runs its course. And we know that because what the passage is about to say. That is the decree of him, the exalted in might, the all-knowing. And the moon, we have measured for it mansions to traverse, till it returns like the old and withered lower part of a date stalk. It is not permitted to the sun to catch up the moon, nor can the night outstrip the day. Each just swims along in its own orbits. So the sun has an orbit, and the moon has an orbit, and they're each swimming along, but the sun can't catch up to the moon. Now, if you're just reading the words off the page, right, and Allah's words are clear, the sun and the moon each have an orbit, but the sun can't catch up to the moon. What's that sound like? It sounds like the sun and the moon are both in a similar orbit, and the sun's sort of chasing the moon around, but can't catch up to it. That's what it sounds like. What does that mean? Okay, so you're talking about the only thing Muslims can do to even try to make sense of this, say, yeah, the moon has an orbit, and that's around the earth. And then the sun, it has an orbit, but it's around the entire galaxy because the galaxy is spinning. right? That's the only thing they can say to try and make sense of this. But does that work? That's the orbit. He's talking about this orbit around the entire galaxy. Well, it doesn't make sense if the sun can't catch up to the moon. That just saying the sun can't catch up to the moon, that assumes that they're in a comparable orbit, and that you're not talking about completely different kinds of orbits. And if we're talking about a 7th century Arab caravan trader, well, you see the moon. You see the moon going at night. You see the sun going during the day. It goes across the sky. Well, what's the obvious? I mean, think about the meaning there, right? The sun's going across the sky. Then it comes night, and then the moon goes across the sky. What are you thinking? You think these things are just going around the Earth, right? Apart from that, if we're talking about this hadith, keep in mind the sun. We know the sun sets in a muddy pool, right? So the sun does have a kind of orbit. It's going down in a pool, and then it comes up, and it comes up in a different pool, and it's doing that. It keeps doing that over and over and over again. So this can't possibly be talking about the sun's orbit around the entire universe. It just can't be talking about that. It would make no sense. And so what Muslims are like Ehteshaam are telling us is you have these passages, and it sounds like they're saying something completely wrong. And so we need to reinterpret them to think that they mean something completely different, when if that's what they mean, if they mean something completely different, then this is the worst possible way Allah could put this. And so once again, Allah is the worst communicator ever. A close second is Muhammad. Muhammad is the second worst communicator in all of history. And the first several generations of Muslims and Muslim scholars and people who are transmitting stories about Muhammad are the biggest bunch of liars in history. And this is the religion that Ehteshaam thinks we're stupid for not believing in.
Real quick, let's see what Yusuf Ali's commentary. It's brief. Here's what it says. And then we'll see what Anthony Rogers wants to say about this, because this is actually towards the end of Ehteshaam's response here, although I do want to play his impression of you again, David Wood. And Yusuf Ali says this: though the sun and the moon both traverse the belt of the zodiac and their motions are different, they never catch up. Oh, it actually has a typo here. It should say they never catch up to each other, but it literally says they never catch up each other. This is commentary note 3986. Their commentary, Surah 36, looking at verses 37 through 41. And here I'm continuing to read this. When the sun and the moon are on the same side and on a line with the earth, there is a solar eclipse. And when on opposite sides in a line, there is a lunar eclipse, but there is no clash. Their laws are fixed by Allah and form the subject of study in astronomy. Similarly, night and day follow each other, but being opposites cannot coincide, a fit emblem of the opposition of good and evil, truth and falsehood. And he continues on, how beautifully the rounded courses of the planets and heavenly bodies are described, swimming through space with perfectly smooth motion. As Shakespeare expresses it, each in his motion like an angel sings, still choiring to the young-eyed cherubims, end quote. He says a little bit more stuff there, but it kind of seems like it's irrelevant to actually the verse itself. It seems like he's just adding extra information to be erudite, but I'm not sure if it's really explaining what's being said there. Anthony, you want to comment?
I mean, Yusuf Ali is, he's 20th century, right? So he's trying to give some, I guess, modern poetic spin on things, but not something you get from reading the passage.
It's fascinating. He quotes Shakespeare. Anthony Rogers, you have anything to say about the sun going from place to place?
Yeah. So I do think they're playing a bit of a game, even with the translation. It seems to me it'd be more accurate just looking at the online corpus, the Arabic corpus that's on IslamAwakened.com. That what it's referring to is it's saying each of them are floating in an orbit. See, that translation it seems to me, suggests that it's the same orbit. And what I think even furthermore proves that is if you look at Surah 91, 1 through 2, it says, by the sun and his brightness, here's an example of Allah swearing by created things, by the sun and his brightness and the moon when she follows him. So here it speaks of the moon following the sun, which would be true if they're both floating in an orbit, not orbits, plural. So the verses just read, the funny thing to me sometimes is that you know, the Quran claims that it's clear. We often criticize it because it isn't clear, but it seems to me we often think the Quran is clearer than Muslims do. You know, Muslims are the ones who are constantly saying, "Oh, that doesn't make any sense. We got to interpret this and mix this word up here." And
I've pointed out in videos that in a weird way, I actually have more respect for Allah and Muhammad than Muslims do, right? When I at least have a higher respect for their communication ability. I don't just say, "Oh, Allah said this, but clearly he means something totally different that lines up with my feelings." I don't do that with Muhammad either, but that's exactly what we find Muslims doing left and right. Allah says this completely scientifically inaccurate thing. Oh, what he really means is, and when you do that, you're saying, I can speak more clearly than Allah, who had all eternity to get his word exactly the way he wanted, and who constantly brags about being perfectly clear in his speech. And you're saying, off the top of my head, I can say, multiverse, and be much clearer than Allah. And Muslims claim they really, it reminds me of what they do with the prophets, right? They say, oh, we respect the Old Testament prophets, even though they clearly don't. They say, we respect Jesus when they clearly don't. They treat him with contempt. Everything you quote from Jesus, they just throw it out like it's garbage. But here you have them, oh, we respect Allah. And no, you don't. You have utter contempt for Allah's communication ability. You will not hesitate to take anything he said and just act like you, off the top of your head, can say something better than Allah could say from all eternity. You do the same thing with Muhammad. And what's amazing is they'll use this, the Quran as its main argument for its own divine inspiration, is this argument from literary excellence, that the Quran is just so masterfully written, it must be from God. And as far as I can tell from Muslims, they're undermining this for themselves. They're saying the Quran is the worst written book in all of history. What does Allah say in the Quran that he actually means, Muslims? If we're talking about his claims about how to treat women or how to treat unbelievers or on scientific issues, you're constantly telling us Allah is the worst possible communicator ever, and any random person walking down the street could write something that is better and more accurate about what Allah meant. What does this mean? It means the Quran is the worst written book ever, right? I mean, if someone came out and hey, I'm writing this book and I'm writing a book on mathematics, but everything I say in the book is wrong, it's not what I really mean, you'd say, well, you shouldn't be writing math books then, because you have no business doing that. You're a horrible, horrible communicator. That's what they're telling us about their God. And then they expect us to take their religion seriously, when it's not just that, it's also that Allah somehow inspired the biggest bunch of liars who've ever existed to record the history of Muhammad, whom we're supposed to follow. This is an amazing religion here.
Well, excellent points. I'm going to play the last little 35 seconds here, and then Anthony Rogers will get your final thoughts. And then I think maybe we can go out with a bang where we actually play the Stephen Hawking Muhammad interview. All right, Anthony Rogers, check this out.
Have failed to show any scientific errors in Islam. Everything that was cited in that video was either from a weak source or was a misinterpreted verse from the Quran. So in conclusion, there are no scientific errors in the Quran or the Hadith. The Al-Tabari sources, those are weak. Those aren't authoritative. Those aren't authoritative according to Islamic scholars, according to Muslim scholars. Thanks for watching, and more videos are coming soon. Salam.
All right, Anthony Rogers, wrap up with what you want to say to Ehteshaam. And I think he's still in the live chat. I'm not sure if there was a curfew limit set by a certain matron or anything like that. I don't know. We'll find out later. But go ahead, Anthony Rogers.
All right, you're gonna stir me up here, and I might end up making a dig at Ehteshaam now. So he just concluded by saying that everything in the video was either weak or misinterpreted. We've discussed this thoroughly. In the first place, even if it were weak, that doesn't mean it's unreliable or inauthentic. It just, at least even according to Muslim scholars, means that it has to be used in certain circumscribed ways. And Ehteshaam, I don't think, is even beginning to have a good grasp of what that entails in terms of, Islamic jurisprudence or Islamic Aqidah and all those other issues that Islamic scholars deal with. But at the same time, we don't take the same approach. And so even if they classify something as weak, that doesn't pose a problem for us. We recognize why they're criticizing something as weak. Oftentimes, it's simply because it doesn't agree with the conclusion that they want to reach. Third, it's not just that the things that can be said to be weak in one hadith, that's all we have. We have other sources besides those, even if they wanted to throw those out. We have the testimony of Muhammad's own cousin, Ibn Abbas. We have the testimony of others that are Muhammad's companions. And these are the same people, by the way, that are supposedly transmitting the Qur'an to us. And so if these people aren't reliable, it's not just that the hadith becomes shaky, but the Qur'an itself also becomes shaky, because they're also purveying down through the ages the Qur'an that Muslims claim can't be rejected. He also said that you're misinterpreting these verses. Well, we went over the verses. As far as saying that there's 7 earths, he didn't deny that. He thinks that's the case, but then he actually misinterpreted it. Muhammad is not talking about alternate realities. He's not talking about other worlds in the sense of parallel universes, a multiverse. That's clearly not what Muhammad had in mind. He's actually talking about earths stacked on top of each other. And so if anybody's guilty of misinterpreting anything, it's Ehteshaam. And if that's what Muhammad meant, then we once again would have to come back to the fact that Muhammad is terribly unclear. Why did no Muslim for 1,400 years come up with the Barry Allen interpretation of the Quran that Ehteshaam's got going? If the Quran is so clear, then we would have expected the flash interpretation to have appeared in history, but it never did. So.
Well, very good, very good, very good. Thank you. Appreciate it. Looks like Ehteshaam is still here. I just saw him say hi. And let's see, David. Let's get you now. And
I'll just say a few words, because I've already said pretty much everything I was thinking on these issues. But when you do this, right? The history issue again. All of these guys ended up with all of these stories that are attributed to all these companions of Muhammad who are learning the Quran from Muhammad himself. We're talking Ibn Abbas, Ibn Masud, all these guys. And they're all getting this wrong. So later Muslims are coming up, constantly falsifying all these stories about Muhammad's companions. What was this just perfectly acceptable? Could anyone for those first 200 years just come up and make up any story they wanted? That's what Muslims are telling us, right? And it gets really bad because Bukhari, by the time he collected his collection of several thousand hadiths, he admitted that he had to go through hundreds of thousands to get to those 7,000 or so. He had to go through hundreds of thousands. So if Muslims want to say, hey, these are weak hadiths, the deception is massively, massively, massively outnumbering and outweighing anything you could regard as true. And if you have that many liars and deceivers during the first 2 centuries of Islam, sorry, don't tell us to come and trust anything anyone ever said. You can't have a guy 2.5 centuries after the time of Muhammad collecting hadiths and sifting through centuries of complete, utter deception and have us trust him to think that he really got to the truth. Especially when even the stories that these guys ended up with in their collections, you still point to them and say they're weak. So these guys were putting together we're going through hundreds of thousands of stories until they got to the best of the best. And anytime Muslims come to a story in the best of the best that they don't like, you can't trust that. And so that's one problem. The other problem is, again, with Allah's communication ability. Think about it. Allah just couldn't say what he meant on the issue of violence and how you treat other people. What he meant to say, according to Muslims, was only fight in self-defense. Well, when it came out, what he really said was fight those who don't believe in Allah. Allah wanted to say always, be super nice to your wives. It came out, if you fear rebellion, banish them to beds apart and beat them. right? So Allah constantly can't say what he means on issues of the treatment of women, on violence, and now we see on issues of science, he just can't say what he means. He's got some sort of cosmic Tourette syndrome where he wants to say one thing, he's trying, but apparently he's off his meds, and he blurts out something completely different that he didn't mean. And it's not until you get to Muslims who came along 14 centuries later on YouTube, off the top of their heads, can say what Allah really meant for him because he just couldn't say it. Well, here's a question. If Allah can't say what he really means on science, and he can't say what he really means on women, and he can't say what he really means about how to treat unbelievers, he just can't say what he really means on any of these issues, why do you trust him when he tells you about theology, when even according to the Quran, that's the least clear stuff he says? The least clear stuff he said are the theological claims. That's the least clear stuff. And you guys are saying that everything else he says is completely unclear. We can't even make sense of it. Well, the only conclusion I can draw is that I can't trust anything your God says on theological issues either. And so if you've got a religion that's founded upon a God and a prophet who can't say what they mean and are completely unclear in every area, and then this religion is passed down by the biggest bunch of liars the world has ever seen, what use is your religion? Just get over it. Don't tell us about your religion anymore. Not interested.
Well, I think that's a good time to play his impersonation of you one more time, and then I'm actually going to play the actual Boom Boom Room skit. And where did it go? All right, I believe it's...
if you're going to play that, you're going to play David's his parting shot.
Anthony had to go there. That's messed up, Anthony.
Because I gotta somehow.
She's clear. I'm just saying.
Disabled kids.
Well, I mean, I have to say, I'm sure she is.
Oh my goodness. Okay. All right. So guys, what I'll do is I've got it lined up here to play actually the actual skit that was being commented on, and I think that's kind of got it going out on a high note to actually play the skit of Stephen Hawking and Muhammad in its entirety. So I'll play that right now here at the end, and I'll let you guys go. So hopefully everything's nice and fast, and then I'll hopefully see their other people who have given to the super chat that I may have missed, because I do think I missed some of you, as well as I'll use that time to try to even see if maybe I can kind of go back and forth a little bit with Ehteshaam himself, because I believe he's still there in the live chat. Let me just pause this real quick here. I believe he's still there from what I've heard, and so maybe we can talk to him perhaps. And I think that's it. Now, Sunday, David Wood, we are going live on your channel. It's supposed to be me, you, and John McCrae.
Is that a fact?
Yeah, John said he could do it. It's supposed to be tomorrow night. He said he could do it if you still want to do it for the Flutang clan.
Yeah, we'll do it.
All right, then what time? 8 o'clock.
I'm doing a debate on Saturday.
Sunday? Or next Saturday?
Saturday.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that. Okay.
Today's Saturday.
Next Saturday.
Got
it. Yeah, that's no problem.
Or 11.
Yep, no problem.
Well, who are you debating, Anthony?
Andrew Griffin, a Unitarian. So not a Arian, not a Jehovah's Witness, but a Socinian Unitarian who says Jesus didn't exist before his conception in the womb. So he's anti-Trinitarian as well as opposed to the deity of Christ.
Oh, so similar to Anthony Buzzard?
Yeah, basically.
Now, I remember I had asked you when you said you were debating someone named Andrew. I said Andrew Livingston, and was I wrong to hear you that you said he was dead?
No, I don't. I can't remember what I said.
You said like he's no longer with us or something, but I thought you said something like that. Okay, so he's not. Okay, good.
I have to go back. I don't remember. Did I say that in text or I don't think I was. I certainly wasn't referring to him being dead.
Okay,
I don't know that, but he's not as active. But the last time I saw him at all active was on the website of a Muslim as a guest writer, and this was like a year ago or so.
Okay.
But I don't think he's debating anymore. His career was over after his first debate.
Didn't he say his parents said he couldn't debate either? Am I wrong about that? Did he have that same issue?
You actually talked to him a lot more. I debated him, but you guys kind of chummed up to each other a little bit. And I think he was saying something about, like he was like not letting people know what he's doing or something like that, or there was something interesting there. I'm not really sure though.
Okay, I got you. Well, I'm going to play, ladies and gentlemen, the particular Boom Boom Room that's been discussed this episode of Street Apologist Live. Catch us tomorrow night, and before we go live on David's channel, my squad, the SA squad, has a live hangout, supporter only hangout. So if you didn't get that information via Patreon, say you've contributed another way, whether you're past or present, hit me up and I'll give you the Zoom link so we can do that. That'll be right before the Flutang Clan with me, John McCrae, on David's channel. And then after the deal on David's channel, I'm actually going to go live on my channel interviewing a local Christian hip-hop artist friend of mine, and we're going to talk about theology, apologetics, and hip-hop. So with that, guys, let's watch this episode. We got 12 minutes. Let's settle in and finish the episode this way. I'm very excited. Here we go.
Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Muhammad's Boom Boom Room, where all of my guests either agree with me completely or they go boom. I am your host, the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon me. And with me now is one of the greatest theoretical physicists of all time, Stephen Hawking. Professor Hawking, so glad you could roll into the studio this evening.
Thank you for having me, Muhammad. Mankind's greatest achievements have come about by talking, and its greatest failures by not talking. If you and I can have a peaceful conversation, then there is hope for the future.
Alhamdulillah! This is why I invite people from all perspectives to join me on my show, so I can give them the opportunity to agree with me.
As a gesture of friendship, I would like to send you a free copy of A Brief History of Time.
Why would you send me a book when, as everyone knows, I can't read?
We are all different, but we share the same human spirit.
Well said! Or should I say, well synthesized. So, tell us about yourself.
All my life, I have been fascinated by the big questions that face us and have tried to find scientific answers to them. My goal is simple. It is a complete understanding of the universe, why it is as it is, and why it exists at all.
Well, if you want to understand the universe, you've come to the right place, because the great God Allah has revealed to me the secrets of the cosmos.
Wonderful. Let us discuss gravitational singularity theorems, cosmological inflation, Euclidean quantum gravity, and the black hole information paradox.
Cosmetological what now? Oh, let's not get ahead of ourselves, Dr. Hawking. We want to keep things simple for the sake of our viewers. Instead, allow me to recap what Al-Islam teaches about the universe. And then you can tell everyone how science has confirmed my revelations.
It is your show. I am ready to be amazed.
Well, towards the bottom of the universe is a giant fish or well. Sometimes that fish or well gets agitated, and this is what causes earthquakes. On the back of the giant sea creature are 7 Earths, all of which are flat. They're stacked up like pita breads, except that there's a 500-year journey in between each one of them. We live on the top Earth, which again is flat. The sun and the moon chase each other around the Earth, much like Aisha and myself, but they can never catch each other. The sun sets in a muddy pool somewhere out west. There are people who live near the pool. They can tell you all about the pool. Above us, in the lowest heaven, are the stars, which are missiles that Allah uses to shoot demons when they try to sneak into paradise to hear his scheming. When you see a shooting star, it's because Allah became angry and hurled a star at a demon. Above the stars are 7 huge domes that enclose the seven heavens. Each of these domes is solid and would fall on us if Allah didn't hold it up by his mighty power. Above the seven solid domes is a large sea, which is as deep as one of the heavens. Above the sea are 8 mountain goats. They're giants, which are all as tall as one of the heavens. And above the goats is the throne of Allah. Now, do you see why Muslim apologists claim that science proves my religion is true? How could I have known all these facts about the universe apart from divine revelation?
Oh, I thought you were joking.
I never joke about the great God Allah.
Muhammad, if I were to summon all of my brain power in order to invent the most ridiculous universe anyone could ever imagine, my imaginary universe would still be more like the real universe than anything you just said. Everything you could possibly get wrong, you got wrong. That seems to be some sort of record.
I think your speech synthesizer must be malfunctioning, unlike my button, which never malfunctions, because you're starting to sound like a crazy person.
The thing about smart people is that they seem like crazy people to dumb people.
Peace be upon me. I do sound crazy to dumb people. That's why Allah always has to remind me that I'm not crazy. But smart people are amazed that my scientific revelations all turned out to be true. Muslim Dawah books, which I can't read, are filled with proof that Western scientists agree with my revelations.
Yes, I read an article about that in the Wall Street Journal. A Muslim organization affiliated with Osama bin Laden gave Western scientists free vacations for them and their wives, first-class plane tickets, 4-star hotel rooms, banquets with heads of state, expensive gifts, and cash, all for sitting down and saying something nice about your absurd scientific claims.
Peace be upon me! That's how you know my revelations are true. The evidence proves that if my followers shower scientists with money and gifts, some of them will say something positive about my revelations.
One of the scientists who fell for this called it mutual manipulation.
Alhamdulillah! Yes! Mutual manipulation! We manipulate scientists into telling the truth about the Qur'an.
And you think that is how science is done? Giving scientists money and vacations and pressuring them to reciprocate by saying that you made an accurate statement? No wonder the Islamic world dominates all branches of science. By the way, that last part was sarcasm.
Professor Hawking, I really cannot understand why someone would disagree with Allah's view of the universe unless he's just a racist against religion.
There is a fundamental difference between religion, which is based on authority, and science, which is based on observation and reason. Science will win because it works.
I will win by slashing the tires on your wheelchair. What happens when you die and face Allah? Is science going to save you?
I imagine what happens to human consciousness when we die is much like turning off a computer. I do not believe in a heaven for computers. I think the afterlife is a fairy story for people afraid of the dark.
Fairy story? You sound like the pagans of Mecca who always call my revelations fables. Listen, you're sitting, not standing, in the presence of a prophet who's been sent to tell you about the afterlife. But you reject my signs, even my giant more. You reject all of the signs that the great God Allah has given you.
The human race is just a chemical scum on a moderate-sized planet orbiting around a very average star in the outer suburb of one among 100 billion galaxies. We are so insignificant that I can't believe the whole universe exists for our benefit.
The human race is chemical scum? I call Jews and Christians the worst of creatures, and everyone throws a hissy fit. But here you are, calling all of humanity chemical scum. If we're all just chemical scum, and dying is like turning off a computer, then who cares about science?
We are just an advanced breed of monkeys on a minor planet of a very average star. But we can understand the universe. That makes us something very special.
Special for what? Special chemical scum who will eventually be turned off like computers? Professor Hawking, don't you see? On some level, you know that we're more than chemical scum. You know that our consciousness is more than a computer program. You're living a kind of double life, pointing out what we are according to your worldview, but assuming all along that we're much more than that.
Life would be tragic if it were not funny.
Funny? Do you enjoy stand-up? If your claims are correct, life is tragic whether it's funny or not. You've been confined to a wheelchair for decades, thinking about the universe. People come to you like you're some sort of guru, and your brilliant insight is that even though we're meaningless scum, we're still special? Do you even hear the words coming out of your speech synthesizer right now?
Although I cannot move and I have to speak through a computer, in my mind I am free.
Free to do what? Don't you believe that all your thoughts are just chemicals sloshing around in your brain? Why are the chemicals sloshing around in your brain somehow more true than the chemicals sloshing around in my brain? You make me want to test gravity by taking you up to the top of a hill and giving you a good shove.
The human failing I would most like to correct is aggression.
Not your legs?
Peace be upon you, please let me finish. The human failing I would most like to correct is aggression. It may have had survival advantage in caveman days to get more food, territory, or a partner with whom to reproduce, but now it threatens to destroy us all.
Aggression doesn't threaten to destroy us all. It only threatens to destroy you and anyone else who disagrees with me. But it doesn't matter, because you're all just chemical scum, right?
While there is life, there is hope.
Wrong! While there's life, there is... Allahu Akbar! I am getting a revelation from the great God Allah. Do not like this video, do not share this video, and do not, under any circumstances, subscribe to this channel. Allahu Akbar!